that I want to be number one. Little did I know that I would, It's hard to imagine that now because we're so far removed from it that it's almost hard to percent. I think sports has always been on the front of social change.
Navratilova was stunned, completely, genuinely, because what Elise Mertens did to Alexandra Eala in Madrid on April 24, 2026 wasn't a tennis match. It was a public dismantling, a calculated, cold-blooded destruction of everything Eala had built across this entire season, executed in 76 minutes on a court nobody was even watching.
Eala, the phenomenon. We didn't know, largely, the tennis community a year ago before her run in Miami, and now it's must-see TV and drawing maybe the biggest crowds anyone outside of Alcaraz Center in the...
The numbers don't care about narratives. They just tell the truth. 6-2, 6-1. 5 breaks of serve converted out of 11 chances. 1 break point faced. Saved. Eala came in with an 11-8 record on the season, fresh off beating a former Grand Slam finalist 2 days earlier without breaking a sweat. The momentum felt unshakable heading into Friday. Court 5 changed everything. Mertens broke serve in the very first game, and the match never recovered from that moment.
This is the goal.
My goal is to be able to integrate myself into the WTA circuit more and to be able to handle myself better on court.
Bolted into the spotlight last month after making the semifinals at one of the biggest pro tennis tournaments in the world.
Navratilova had gone on record months earlier, pointing directly at Eala's serve as the specific weakness that would keep costing her against top competition. Against Mertens, that prediction landed with devastating accuracy. I've never seen this. 3 consecutive second-round exits in Madrid from a player this talented genuinely defies explanation. Subscribe before you scroll. This breakdown will completely change how you see Eala's clay crisis.
Alexandra Eala, that's been a talk, and which is understandable. There's some players coming from respective countries, like she's coming from Philippines.
What went wrong is far more specific than you think. 3 years in a row, same tournament, same round, same exit. And at this point, that's not a coincidence anymore. Most coverage of this match focused on the scoreline and moved on. That's the lazy version of this story. The real version requires going back further, understanding what Mertens actually did tactically, understanding what Madrid did institutionally, and understanding why Navratilova's warning from months ago landed with such devastating accuracy on April 24, 2026. Because Eala didn't arrive in Madrid playing poorly. That's the part that makes this genuinely difficult to process. 2 days before facing Mertens, she dismantled Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova 6-3, 6-3, a former French Open finalist, committing only 8 unforced errors across the entire match. 8 errors in a WTA 1000 first-round match is a near-flawless output. Her tennis looked sharp heading into Friday. Her confidence had every reason to be high. Mertens simply had a complete answer for everything Eala brought to that court. To understand why, you need to go back to Monastir, Tunisia, October 2023. That was their first meeting on tour. Eala was ranked 196th in the world at that point, still learning what the professional circuit actually demands at its highest level. Mertens was ranked 36th and won 7-5, 6-0. The Belgian figured Eala out with uncomfortable speed in that match, using defensive depth and tactical variety to drag the young Filipina into exactly the kind of grinding, physically exhausting exchanges that neutralize her biggest strengths. Fast forward to Madrid 2026, and the scoreline got worse, not better, 6-2, 6-1. The specific vulnerabilities Mertens exploited in Monastir were still present 3 years later, and Mertens walked onto court 5 already knowing exactly where to apply pressure. Navratilova had flagged the central issue months before this match happened. Speaking ahead of Indian Wells in early March, she told the WTA directly that Eala's serve was the area requiring the most urgent structural improvement. A bigger delivery, a stronger kick, damage inflicted before opponents could settle into rallies, those were the specific things she identified as missing. She also acknowledged that Eala's slight build makes absorbing incoming pace physically difficult, which compounds the serving problem at this level of competition. The slice drew praise. The tennis IQ drew praise. The left-handed variety drew praise. But the serve was the flag Navratilova planted firmly in the ground. Against Mertens in Madrid, that flag became a gravestone. Mertens broke Eala's serve in the very first game of the match. That single moment set the psychological tone for everything that followed. Losing serve before establishing a single clean service winner, before the match has any rhythm, before the crowd, what little crowd existed on court 5, has any reason to believe in a comeback, makes the mountain steep almost immediately. Eala has shown genuine fighting ability across the 2025 and 2026 seasons. She clawed back from difficult positions at Indian Wells and Dubai on hard courts. But clay operates on a completely different psychological and physical register. Points stretch longer. The mental drain compounds faster. When the serve isn't functioning as a weapon, every single rally begins from a position of disadvantage. Mertens converted 5 of 11 breakpoint chances across the match. She saved the only breakpoint she faced herself. Those numbers don't describe a competitive match that happened to go one way. They describe a player operating at full tactical efficiency against an opponent who never once found a foothold. 7 consecutive games lost across the middle stretch of the match tells the most brutal part of this story. Eala had moments within that run. She forced deuce in several games, earned breakpoints she couldn't convert, showed flashes of the quality that has made her one of the most exciting players on tour. But Mertens had the clay court experience and the tactical intelligence to shut down every avenue Eala tried to use. A 6-2, 6-1 scoreline with that kind of one-sided breakpoint conversion rate doesn't happen by accident. It happens when one player has genuinely solved the other. Madrid made the situation considerably worse before the first ball was even struck. Navratilova and Lindsay Davenport had already addressed the court assignment issue publicly back in January, following Eala's Australian Open first-round match against Alicia Parks at Melbourne Park. That match was played on court 6, despite Eala drawing one of the largest Filipino crowds the Australian Open had witnessed in years. Fans overflowing walkways, queues stretching far outside the venue, people standing for over an hour just hoping to get inside. Navratilova said on Tennis Channel that organizers needed to be more aware of where players come from and what fan bases are actually present at these events. Davenport went further, saying the tournament had underestimated Eala's drawing power significantly and that a bigger show court was the obvious call. Madrid heard all of that. Court 5 was the response. The consequence of that decision is difficult to quantify precisely, but impossible to dismiss. Eala has spoken openly about what crowd energy means to her game. After the Australian Open defeat, she described the fan support as heartwarming and admitted the noise made the loss harder to absorb, which also implies the reverse. When that support is present, it pulls her through difficult moments. When it's absent and she's trailing 0-4 in the second set against a seasoned Belgian specialist on a slow clay surface, there's nothing in the environment pushing her back into the match. Did the court 5 assignment cause the defeat? No. Mertens was the superior player on the day and deserves full credit for a dominant performance. But did it remove a factor that has genuinely helped Eala compete above her ranking in previous matches? Almost certainly. The Madrid Open chose not to find out, and that decision should sit uncomfortably with the tournament's organizers. An umpire warning during the latter stages of the second set added one final layer of frustration to an already painful afternoon. Eala disputed the call on court before returning to the baseline to finish out the match. It's the kind of flashpoint that tends to occur when a player is already emotionally stretched. When the match has slipped, the environment is flat, and nothing has gone according to plan. It didn't change the outcome, but it captured the texture of exactly how this day felt for her. So where does Eala's clay season actually go from here? Her overall 2026 record of 11-8 in singles is worth keeping in perspective. She reached the semifinals in Auckland, went deep in Abu Dhabi, and produced arguably the biggest win of her career when she defeated Jasmine Paolini, ranked number 8 in the world at the time, at the Dubai WTA 1000 event before Coco Gauff ended her run in the quarterfinals. On hard courts, Eala is a proven threat to top 20 opponents. Her left-handed serve angle, her variety, her ability to construct points from defensive positions, all of it functions effectively on surfaces where pace stays consistent and predictable. Clay dismantles that framework in specific ways. The slower surface reduces the effectiveness of her serve even further than it already operates. The higher bounce takes away her slice as a reliable neutralizing tool. The extended rally length exposes physical limitations against bigger opponents capable of generating heavy topspin from both wings. Mertens has won 2 WTA titles on clay across a career that stretches back more than 15 years on the surface. She understands precisely how to slow a match into a grinding war of attrition, how to vary depth and spin to disrupt rhythm, and how to force errors through patience rather than power. That tactical profile is almost perfectly designed to expose everything currently incomplete about Eala's clay court game. The upcoming schedule still offers genuine opportunity. Eala heads to the Catalonia Open, a WTA 125 challenger event in La Bisbal, where she enters as the 6th seed, followed by the Italian Open in Rome and another challenger in Parma before Roland Garros. That's meaningful match time on clay against varied opposition, and every hour spent competing on this surface is data Eala's team can use heading into the French Open. But the pattern, now stretching across 3 consecutive Madrid campaigns, is going to follow her into every press conference between here and Paris. Navratilova's diagnosis from March remains the most clinically precise assessment of what needs to change. The serve has to become a genuine weapon, not simply a delivery that starts rallies, but something that creates free points and puts opponents under pressure from the very first shot. Until that structural shift happens, clay court specialists will keep arriving with the same blueprint Mertens used in Monastir in 2023 and deployed again with even greater efficiency in Madrid on April 24, 2026. Eala is 20 years old. She has time that most players at her level would spend carelessly. Every indication from her ranking progression and her conduct in difficult matches suggests she won't. The talent was never in question. The mental resilience has been demonstrated repeatedly. What Madrid exposed is the one specific technical gap that clay refuses to let anyone hide, and now that it's been exposed twice by the same opponent using the same approach, the pressure to address it before Roland Garros is no longer optional. Navratilova identified it. Madrid confirmed it. The next chapter belongs entirely to Eala. There is also a broader conversation happening around Eala that this Madrid result cannot erase. She has become one of the most watched players on the entire WTA Tour, not just among Filipino fans, but globally. Her Australian Open press conference drew over 100,000 live viewers, surpassing streams from Aryna Sabalenka and Carlos Alcaraz on the same day. That kind of cultural reach is almost entirely unprecedented for a player sitting outside the top 20. Tournaments are beginning to understand, slowly and somewhat reluctantly, that Eala brings something beyond ranking points to every event she enters. She brings an audience, she brings noise, she brings a fan base that travels internationally and fills courts beyond capacity just to watch her compete. Madrid chose to ignore that reality on April 24th, the Italian Open and Roland Garros will almost certainly make a different calculation. And when Eala finally walks onto a main show court at a clay event, surrounded by thousands of fans, with the full weight of that support behind every point, the version of her game that emerges could look very different from what Court 5 in Madrid witnessed on a quiet Friday afternoon. If this breakdown gave you a perspective you hadn't considered before, subscribe and turn notifications on. Because when Eala finally gets her clay court result, and everything about her trajectory suggests she will, you'll want to have watched every step of the journey. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the serve is the real problem, or is Madrid simply a tournament that doesn't suit her game? That conversation is worth having.